notice how some people can, like, command a room without even saying a word?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
Today, we're diving deep into that idea.
Okay.
It's all about the power of saying less,
Interesting.
which is a strategy that Robert Greene lays out in his book, The 48 Laws of Power.
It's a fascinating book, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of a treasure trove of insights on navigating power dynamics, and Law 4, always say less than necessary, is particularly intriguing.
Yeah, we're going to unpack this law today.
Okay.
Explore how saying less can actually make you more powerful,
Right.
and then see how this all plays out in some really interesting historical and fictional examples.
And the beauty of this law is that it applies to so many different situations, whether you're in a negotiation, a job interview, or even just a casual conversation. Understanding the power of saying less can give you a real edge.
Okay, so let's get into the heart of Law 4.
Right.
What's the core idea here? Why is saying less so powerful?
Well, think about it this way. When you talk too much, you risk revealing more than you intend.
Oh, yeah.
You might contradict yourself, make a slip up, or even just bore people to death.
Oh, I've definitely been there.
Uh-huh.
I'm a sucker for a good story,
Yeah.
but sometimes I realize I've gone off on a tangent and, like, completely lost my audience.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
But by learning to be concise,
Okay.
to get to the point without all the extra fluff,
Mm-hmm.
your words actually carry more weight.
Okay.
People pay attention because they know you're not wasting their time.
Right, it's like that saying, brevity is the soul of wit.
Exactly.
But it's more than just being witty.
Yeah,
It's about being strategic with your communication.
exactly. And that's where the power of silence comes in.
Okay.
When you're comfortable with silence, it can be an incredibly powerful tool.
I've always felt this pressure to fill any silence in a conversation. Like it's some kind of social obligation.
Yeah, that's a common feeling. But what if you turn that on its head?
Okay.
Instead of feeling the need to fill the void, embrace the silence.
Okay.
Let it hang in the air for a moment.
I can see how that would be unsettling for the other person.
Right.
But how does that translate into power?
Silence disrupts expectations.
Okay.
We're wired to fill those empty spaces.
Right.
So when someone withholds information,
Yeah.
it creates tension.
Okay.
And that tension can shift the entire dynamic of the interaction.
So it's like using silence as a way to gain control,
Yeah,
to make the other person scramble to fill the void.
precisely. They
Yeah.
might start talking more, revealing things they wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay.
Or they might just become more receptive to what you have to say when you finally do speak.
This is blowing my mind.
Uh-huh.
It's like silence is this secret weapon we all have access to,
Right.
but we're often too afraid to use it.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow.
And if you look at history, you'll find plenty of examples of people who wielded silence masterfully.
Okay, let's get into those examples.
Sure.
Who comes to mind when you think about historical figures who understood the power of saying less?
Well, there are many.
Yeah.
But two contrasting examples that immediately come to mind
Okay.
are Coriolanus, the Roman general,
Okay.
and Winston Churchill,
Okay.
the British Prime Minister during World War II.
Interesting choices.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with Churchill.
Okay.
But tell me more about Coriolanus.
Sure.
How did he fail to grasp this law?
Coriolanus was a war hero, a brilliant military strategist, but he had this fatal flaw.
Okay.
He couldn't stop talking.
Oh, no.
He was known for his long, arrogant speeches,
Oh, wow.
where he often insulted the very people he needed on his side.
What a classic example of someone talking themselves out of a position of power.
Right.
It sounds like his words became his own worst enemy.
Precisely.
Wow.
His inability to control his tongue alienated the Roman public and even the senators who had once supported him.
Oh, wow.
Ultimately, it led to his downfall.
Wow, that's a cautionary tale if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears to Churchill.
Okay.
He's almost the polar opposite of Coriolanus, right?
Absolutely.
He understood how to use words sparingly, but powerfully.
Yes. Churchill was a master communicator, particularly in times of crisis.
Yeah,
He knew that in moments of uncertainty and fear,
right.
people craved clear, concise messages of hope and strength.
And those iconic speeches during World War II.
Oh, yeah.
We shall fight on the beaches.
Yes.
This was their finest hour. He didn't need to go on and on.
Right.
Those few words captured everything.
Exactly. He understood that brevity,
Uh-huh.
particularly in times of crisis,
Yeah,
can have a far greater impact than endless rambling.
right.
His words galvanized a nation
Yeah.
and inspired them to persevere through one of their darkest hours.
So we've got Coriolanus, who talked himself out of power, and Churchill, who used the power of saying less to rally a nation.
Yeah.
Two very different outcomes.
Absolutely.
Driven by their mastery, or lack thereof, of this law. It makes you realize how important it is to be mindful of how we use our words.
Absolutely. And, it's not just in history where we see this law at play.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's woven into the fabric of so many stories we love, from books to movies and TV shows.
Okay, let's dive into the world of fiction next.
All right.
Are there any particular characters that spring to mind when you think about the power of saying less?
Oh, absolutely. Tons.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
Yeah, where do we begin?
Maybe with a character who embodies mystery and intrigue.
Okay.
Tyler Durden from Fight Club.
Oh, Tyler Durden. Yeah, he's a fantastic example.
Yeah.
He's this enigmatic figure who captivates everyone's attention.
Right.
Precisely because he doesn't reveal too much.
Right.
His words are carefully chosen, almost like riddles, forcing those around him to lean in and try to decipher his meaning.
Exactly.
It's like he understands that the less he says, the more powerful he becomes. People project their own desires and interpretations onto him, giving him this almost mythical aura.
Exactly, and that's part of what makes him such a compelling character. He understands the allure of the unknown. And then you have someone like Jon Snow from Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
He's a man of action, not of endless speeches.
He's a great contrast to someone like Tyrion Lannister.
Oh, right.
Who's always quick with a witty remark or a cutting observation.
Yeah.
Jon's silence is often interpreted as strength, as a sign of deep thought and careful consideration.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because in a world of political maneuvering and backstabbing, Jon's reserved nature actually makes him stand out. It allows others to project their own hopes and ideals onto him.
Right.
Which ultimately strengthens his position.
It's like his silence becomes a blank canvas for others to fill with their own interpretations.
Right.
Which makes him a more unifying figure than someone who's constantly pushing their own agenda.
Right. And then you have a character like Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
Who uses silence in a completely different way.
Okay.
It's not about mystery or intimidation with him.
Right.
It's about observation and deduction.
He's absorbing every detail.
Yeah.
Every nuance before he speaks. And when he does finally open his mouth, it's usually to deliver a brilliant insight that no one else has even considered.
It's almost as if his silence is part of his deductive process.
Yeah.
Allowing him to gather all the information he needs before arriving at his brilliant conclusions.
Which brings us to a slightly darker example.
Okay.
V from V for Vendetta.
Right.
He uses silence and anonymity, concealed behind that iconic mask, to create a sense of fear and uncertainty.
V's silence is a weapon. A way to control the narrative and keep people guessing.
Right.
He understands that in the absence of information, fear and speculation can run rampant.
It's a fascinating example of how saying less can be used to manipulate and control.
Right.
Especially when combined with carefully orchestrated actions.
So we see how this law plays out in such diverse ways in fiction.
Yeah.
Just as it does in real life. It highlights how silence can be used strategically.
Yeah.
Whether to build mystique, encourage trust, gain knowledge, or even instill fear.
It really underscores how powerful a tool silence can be.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so we've explored some pretty fascinating examples from history and fiction.
Right.
But how do we, the everyday deep divers, put this law into practice?
That's a great question, and it's what we'll explore next.
Okay.
But for now, what stands out to you from these examples?
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered someone who used silence to their advantage?
Yeah, it's been amazing to see how this seemingly simple concept, the power of saying less, plays out in such diverse ways.
Absolutely.
We've seen how historical figures and fictional characters alike have used it to their advantage. And now I'm curious to see how we can apply it in our own lives.
Well, it's not about becoming a silent observer in every interaction, but rather about being more mindful and intentional with our words.
Okay.
It's about understanding when to speak up and when to hold back, when to elaborate, and when to be concise.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot where our words carry the most weight and have the greatest impact.
Exactly. It's like we've been talking about. Sometimes saying less truly is more.
Right.
It's about choosing your words carefully, embracing silence, and understanding that what you don't say can be just as powerful, if not more so, than what you do.
So where do we start?
Yeah, that's the question, right?
Are there any practical tips or strategies
Sure.
we can use to incorporate this law into our daily lives?
Absolutely. One of the most important things is to be aware of your audience.
Okay.
And the context of the conversation. Who are you talking to?
Right.
What's the purpose of the interaction?
Yeah.
What kind of impression do you want to make?
It's like tailoring your communication style to fit the situation.
Yeah.
You wouldn't use the same approach in a job interview as you would with your closest friend.
Precisely.
Right.
And once you're aware of the context, then you can start to think about how apply some of the principles we've been discussing.
Like being concise and getting to the point.
Exactly. Think about the last time you listened to someone ramble on and on.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find yourself tuning them out?
Oh, absolutely.
Did their words lose their impact?
Yeah. I think we've all been there.
Being concise isn't about being rude or abrupt.
Right.
It's about respecting your audience's time and attention. It's about delivering your message in a clear, impactful way.
So less is more when it comes to the actual words we use.
Yeah.
But what about those moments of silence? How do we embrace those without feeling awkward or uncomfortable?
It takes practice.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. The next time you feel that urge to fill a silence, try resisting it.
Okay.
See what happens.
Right.
You might be surprised at how the other person responds.
You mentioned earlier how silence can shift the power dynamic in a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Is that something we can consciously use to our advantage?
Absolutely. It can be a very subtle but effective way to take control of a situation.
Right.
When you're comfortable with silence, it shows that you're not afraid to let the other person do the talking.
And that can be incredibly disarming.
Right.
Especially if they're used to dominating conversations.
Yeah.
It forces them to step back and really listen to what you have to say.
Right. And it also gives you the opportunity to observe them more closely, to pick up on their nonverbal cues, and get a better sense of their true intentions.
So we've got conciseness and embracing silence.
Yeah.
Are there any other tips you'd recommend for those of us who are ready to start putting this law into practice?
Well, building on those ideas.
Okay.
Think about cultivating a bit of mystery.
Okay.
You don't have to reveal every detail of your life or your plan.
Right.
A little bit of intrigue can go a long way.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like playing your cards close to your chest, not giving everything away at once.
Okay.
It keeps people guessing and wanting to know more.
Exactly. It's about being selective with what you share and how you share it.
Okay.
It creates a sense of intrigue that can draw people in.
I love these tips. They're so practical and easy to implement.
Good.
But I think the most important takeaway for me is the power of listening.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked a lot about saying less.
All right.
But what about the flip side of that coin?
You've hit the nail on the head. It's impossible to truly master the art of saying less.
Right.
Without also mastering the art of listening.
It's about being present in the conversation.
Yeah.
Actively engaging with what the other person is saying and not just waiting for your turn to talk.
When you truly listen, you gather so much more information.
Yeah.
Not just about the topic at hand, but about the person you're talking to. You understand their motivations, their fears, their desires.
And that understanding is invaluable.
Yeah.
Whether you're negotiating a deal, building a relationship, or just having a casual conversation.
Right. Active listening is a skill that can benefit you in every aspect of your life.
I agree.
It shows respect, it builds trust, and it allows you to connect with people on a deeper level.
So deep divers, we've explored the power of saying less.
Yeah.
Drawing insights from history, fiction, and even our own lives as we wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating law. I'm curious to hear what resonates most with you.
What are some situations in your own life where you could benefit from speaking less and listening more? What steps can you take this week to put these principles into practice?
Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all.
That's a good one.
This was your deep dive on Law 4.
Thanks for listening.
Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.